DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one show, one book, and this daily masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is why female athletes do not deserve, quote, equal pay, close quote. So on the heels of yesterday's episode, we just talked about this concept of NCAA athletes being paid. I figured it was only right that we might as well address the equal pay conversation that actually is even more of a hot button issue today in early to mid 2021 as it was back a couple of years ago. As a matter of fact, this one's being talked about even more than the NCAA one. NCAA conversation has just been an ongoing thing for like 20, 30 years. This women's equal pay thing is actually more of a new thing. So I actually should have did this one first. I should promote this one even more than I would yesterday's episode. So before I get into explaining why I'm talking about this, I'll tell you that I do have a text line, and I want you to text me. Tell me the most valuable insight you got from today, or anything you want to question me on, challenge me on, or anything you didn't understand. Actually, you probably don't understand everything, but anything you got a question about or the best insight you got today. My text number is 305-384-6894. Once again, 305-384-6894. Tell me the most valuable thing you get from today's episode. Now, I mentioned a couple weeks ago, the episode where I was talking about the emotion Olympics, how people are just leveraging their emotions in conversations and kind of using this in an offensive way, not offensive like offending people, but offensive as in pushing themselves forward by just telling people their emotions over things. And it's actually kind of getting people to respond, which was interesting to me, for lack of a better term, and how this women's national soccer team player, Megan Rapinoe, made her way all the way to the White House with this argument of women's soccer players are being disrespected and devalued and not being shown their proper respect, I guess, because they're not getting paid as much as the men's soccer players. And I posed the question when I saw that, well, is there an economic argument to this? And the people who responded to me said, well, no, there is no economic argument, LOL. She's just saying this, that the women just deserve the same amount just because. And Megan Rapinoe's only argument that she offered from what I saw was that, well, the women's team is more successful than the men's team. The women's team is more successful in women's soccer than the men's team is in men's soccer, which from what I've seen is objectively true. They are more successful, but that does not necessarily mean that they deserve more money. And this whole concept of female athletes should get more money just has to be backed up by something that makes sense money-wise, because money, as they say, doesn't grow on trees. It's not going to just come out of nowhere just because somebody said they deserve as much or more or equal to someone else. There was an article a few years ago, this is probably maybe 2018, maybe 2017, where someone decided to speak to some WNBA players, WNBA being the women's NBA, and they were asking these women players about their salaries and how much money they made, and why, for those of you who don't know, that most women players who play in the WNBA, not most, but I would say many, let's say, they also play overseas during the overseas season. So the overseas basketball season happens the same time as the NBA season. So the WNBA season, knowing this ever since its inception, the WNBA season actually happens during the summer. So the WNBA happens in the time when normally would be the off season for someone who only played overseas. So what happens then, if you put two and two together, a lot of the top rated and top players in women's basketball professionally, they play in the WNBA in the summer, and then they play overseas during the fall, the winter, into the spring. And so technically, they don't have an off season because they're playing basketball all year round. And the reason they do this is because, first of all, they make way more money playing overseas than they make playing in the WNBA, but they still want to play in the WNBA because the WNBA is way more visible. Who watches, how many people listen to this right now watch overseas basketball? I don't care what level you're talking, male, female. How many of you actually tune in and watch basketball being played overseas? And just in case you didn't know, to watch basketball overseas, you actually have to have a membership or some type of account on one of these sites, and you have to pay for it. So if you're not paying for access to watch those games, you ain't watching overseas basketball. So these women want to be seen. They want to play where their friends and family and people they went to school with and all that stuff can see them. They want to play in America, which is where a lot of them are from. So I understand them wanting to play overseas, but it becomes a grind where you don't have an off season. You're basically playing basketball all year round. And the WNBA doesn't pay nearly as much as many of the top players are making when they're playing overseas. So this article had come out where a few players were being interviewed and focused on this article. And they were talking about, well, look, these NBA players who aren't even as good in the NBA as I am in women's basketball are making 10, 20, 30 times as much money as I am every season. And it wasn't necessarily that they mentioned any names. And there were some memes that got out that alleged that a name got mentioned, but the players themselves said that they didn't mention any names. But I understand how you could be a woman and you could be one of the top 10 players in the WNBA, and then you're looking at some dude in the NBA who's like the ninth guy in a rotation, barely getting into games, and he's making $8 million a year while you're making $100,000 to play in the WNBA. You're like, how the hell? I'm way better than him, at least in women's relative to my sport. I'm way better than he is in his sport. How's he making way more money than me? And you start to feel, you start to be a little bit pissed off about that. I can understand that. And that was an article, again, that was a couple years ago. And now the women's soccer team kind of took this up. Well, Megan Rapinoe herself, she became the spokesperson for this whole thing. And again, this idea got let all the way to the White House. How the hell it got all the way to the White House? Actually, I was going to say I had no idea, but I actually have a pretty good idea because the type of administration that we have here, it's very social justice-y. It's about, all right, well, this group is underserved or this group is underprivileged. This group has been done wrong. This group's not getting as much as others. So we got to bring everybody up, make everybody equal at the same time. Unfortunately, our current administration and whoever else is pulling the strings around these ideas, they will fail at this. They're not going to tell you that they failed. They will give you plenty of other reasons why it hasn't quite worked yet, no matter how long they try it. But this is not going to work because it's impossible to manufacture equality. I've told you that already in previous episodes of this show. But all that being said, today I'm going to address this whole concept of should female athletes be paid as much as male athletes? Why or why not? And I need all female athletes who are listening to this right now and all advocates of female athletes or advocates of female athletes getting equal pay. All right, I'm an advocate of female athletes. I know I got a ton of female athletes who listen to the show, from softball to basketball to equestrian to people who do archery, believe it or not, bowlers. I know I have a lot of female athletes who listen to this, so I'm an advocate of female athletes myself. But this concept that we're talking about here today specifically is about, should a female athlete get paid the same amount as a male athlete just because you are female and they are male, and you notice that the male happens to be making more money? That is the conversation we're having today. The answer, I'm telling you up front, the answer is no. Just on that alone, the answer is absolutely not. And today I'm going to explain why, and I need everyone to hear me out before you decide to, fuck Dre, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a misogynist or chauvinist because he's saying this. I don't think any of you think that, but just in case, I got to make sure I throw the disclaimers out. Again, I want you to text me 305-384-6894. Let me know your thoughts on what you hear today, but make sure you hear everything I'm saying to hear it right. Point number one. Topic once again, why female athletes do not deserve, quote, equal pay, close quote. Number one, we are in a performance and a results-based business. Everybody knows this, right? If you listen to this show, you should know that we're in a performance and a results-based business. I've been telling you that for years. Now, I also told you that equality is a myth. And let me tell you which episode that I told you that equality was a myth, so you can go listen to it yourself. That was episode number 730, why equality is a myth. And I talked about equality in several episodes, especially last summer, episode 1622, why equality is impossible. Episode 1619, we talked about racial inequality being a fight that you cannot win. So go check those episodes as well. Understand that we are not all the same. And when I say we, I'm talking we, even when you're talking male compared to males, females compared to females, males compared to females, black, white, young, old, we are not all the same. And thus, we will not all have the same opportunities, nor will we have the same outcomes. Now, I was just on the show recently where someone was saying, well, look, people are trying to say, well, everyone should get the same outcomes. That doesn't make any sense. And even Mr. Kendi in his anti-racism book said, well, when the outcomes are not the same, that's a proof of racism, which is a completely ridiculous idea. What's even more ridiculous is that a bunch of people co-signed and agreed with him. makes no sense whatsoever, which is why I gave 4 episodes even discussing that very concept. But even equal opportunity, this is something I hear people say, the equal outcomes is not going to happen, but equal opportunity, that's something that we can all fight for. Well, that's not going to happen either. We're not all going to get equal opportunity. I'm pausing there so that can sink in with you all. We are not all going to have equal opportunity. If the work that you do does not generate revenue, you should not expect nor demand as much money as someone who does work that does generate revenue. If someone decides to go into, let's say, the tech world where a bunch of venture capitalist money is being thrown around, and you decide to go into being an indie artist playing local bars and clubs, you shouldn't expect to get the same opportunities to make money that they have because they chose a different field. So that's a extreme example, but this is the way that it works. One guy's playing in the NBA and you're playing in the WNBA as a female, you're probably not going to make the same amount of money because there's more money in the NBA. The minimum salary in the NBA is more than the max in the WNBA. Why? Because more money in the NBA. More money is being generated by this industry than that industry. This is just what it is. So if your work is not generating the same revenue, you should not be expecting or ridiculously demanding more money. And Megan Rapinoe was positioning her argument as kind of like a negotiation, but at the same time more of a demand, or women are going to do this and we deserve this and that, and kind of sounding it as if it was a demand, but it's not really a demand if nobody's actually doing it. It's not a demand if people don't actually follow it. You know what I'm saying? Men's soccer just in the big picture, and people did articles on this back when the women won the World Cup, whatever year that was. It might have been 2019, 2018, I don't remember. They won the World Cup, and there's all these people saying, look, women won the World Cup. This is further proof that they deserve equal pay. And there were many articles written where people actually dissected it and broke it down. Here's how much money is in the men's. Here's how much money is in the women's. Here's why the men make this much and women make this much as far as the American soccer teams. Even though, again, the women's team is much more successful than the men's team. Here's why the men still make more money, because men's soccer generates more revenue than women's soccer by a large amount, which is why the men make more money even though they are not as successful. This is unfortunately, I guess, I'm using unfortunately with a question mark because I don't even consider this unfortunate. This is just the truth of the situation. The NBA as a product generates more revenue than the WNBA as a product. So it makes sense that the lowest paid player in the NBA makes more money than the highest paid player in the WNBA. The WNBA as an entity doesn't even make money. Right, the WNBA is a loss leader for the NBA. For those of you who know what a loss leader is, it's a product that a company sells knowing that selling that product is losing them money, but they're willing to sell that product and lose money on it because they get you to come into their ecosystem with that product. So even though they lose money every time somebody buys it, they get you into their world, and that does something for them. And there could be many reasons. Some companies sell products as a loss leader because even though they lose money on it, now everything else you buy from them, they're actually going to make money on it. Or a company might have a product as a loss leader because selling that product and getting you to buy it gives you positive feelings about them and how they are, which just makes them look better in the public. It's like a PR/marketing thing. And this is the situation with the NBA. Here's another thing with the NBA, and the reason that they keep pushing the WNBA, even though the WNBA as a business itself is a loss. The WNBA is a bad business, not making any money. So if the NBA was just a shark business person with no emotions and no feelings and didn't care about public relations and public perception, the WNBA would no longer exist. But since those things do matter, and we just talked about the Emotion Olympics a couple weeks ago, those things absolutely matter. And since the the NBA itself has taken a very woke position when it comes to social justice and these kind of things, they could never get rid of the WNBA. They'll never be able to get rid of it, not in our lifetimes, because of the position that they've taken. And another reason why some companies might offer a product as a loss leader, such as the NBA offering the WNBA, is because if they did get rid of it, they would get so slaughtered and so destroyed and so dragged through the mud publicly, public relations wise, that it wouldn't even be worth the money that they save, the amount of PR hits that they would take for doing it. So if the NBA got rid of the WNBA, let's say whoever's in charge, so let's say Adam Silver, NBA commissioner, came out and said, no, we're ending the WNBA because it's not making us any money. It's actually costing us money. And since I, Adam Silver, am a businessman, we got to kill off the product that is no longer working. And again, as just a dispassionate business person, this would be a good business move. But if they did that, the NBA would get so trashed and they would get so attacked that the amount of money they would lose based off the PR attacks would be more than the amount of money they saved by getting rid of the bad product being the WNBA. And again, female basketball players and female sports advocates, I'm not saying the WNBA is a bad product, meaning that the players aren't good or that the games aren't worth watching. I personally do not watch the WNBA, no offense. I'm not saying it's a bad product because the basketball product isn't good. What I'm saying is, when I say bad product, I'm talking about a product that is not making money. So I want to be clear what I'm saying when I use that phrase in this context, because I may use it in a different context in a different conversation. So regardless, all that being said, regardless of the individual team performance of NBA teams or WNBA teams, the performance of the sport itself, and two different sports I'm talking here, men's pro basketball, women's pro basketball, the performance of the sports lead to men earning more money because there is a bigger pie to be sliced. The WNBA does not have a big enough pie for them to be making what NBA players make. This is an economic reality. Okay, this is an economic reality. This is not an anti-female argument. Hopefully none of you think that I'm making an anti-female argument here on this show. I got damn near 2,000 episodes of receipts. This show is not about anything close to that. But just in case any of you snowflakes who is so hard on the social justice thing and this woke thing that you can't see through that, I got to make sure that I'm saying everything. You got to say everything these days, folks, because people will take anything, try to use it out of context against you. Trust me, it's happened to me. I'm sure it'll happen again. Hopefully not with this episode, but it happens. This is just the world that we're in right now. So you got to make sure you protect yourself at all times, like they say in a boxing match. So this is an economic reality. It is not anti-female. This is just the facts of the numbers. To draw more money to what you do, you need more of an audience to see and give a damn about what you do. This is just how all business works. If you want to make more money from your video that you put on the internet, you got to get more people to watch the video. If you want more people to buy your product, you got to get more people to come to the page and see that you have a product and see how much it costs and get them to actually buy it. This is just the way that it works. There are fewer eyeballs on the WNBA, thusly they make less money. Now, that could be the whole episode, but let's move on because I got more. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is why female athletes do not deserve, quote, equal pay, close quote. Number 2, I told you in episode number 1579. Now, this is where I'm going to talk specifically to those of you who you heard everything I said in point number 1, but you're still, even though I just logically and factually, economic based, laid out the argument for why there's no argument here. Some of you are still upset. Some of you are still not satisfied. So here in point number 2, I'm going to address your thought process or your objections to the fact that I just laid out the reality for you. I told you in episode 1579. The topic in that episode is never look at the food on another man's plate. And when I say man, I'm referring to humans or another person's plate. Let's just say it that way for, what is the word? What do they call it? Politically correct. Yeah, for PC reasons. Never look at the food on another person's plate. What another person has, regardless of their gender or their race, and your gender and your race. So if you're female looking at what men have, or you're white looking at what black people got, or black looking at what white people have, it's not your business what somebody else has on their plate. It is not your business. Now, in the time that we're in now of social justice and wokeism and all this equality or what equity, whatever phrase you want to put on this, maybe you put all those on it and some others that I don't even know about yet. In this time, the point that I just made and the episode that I just referred you to are like, people don't want to hear that shit at all. But that's the reason why I'm here. Because if I was just saying something that everybody else is already saying, then I would just retire this mic. I wouldn't need to record because I'm just saying what everybody else is saying. I wouldn't be adding to the conversation or starting a new conversation. What other people have ain't your business. The resources that you use looking at what other people have, resources being your time, your money, sometimes money that you're not making because you're not focusing on you, your attention, your energy, and your focus. The resources that you're using looking at other people's shit, you could be using those same resources to maybe work on putting food on your own plate. So then you won't have to worry about what somebody else has. Because when you got enough food on your plate, it doesn't matter what somebody else has on theirs. You're good enough with your own sustenance, with what you're eating. Now, personally, I would love for Work on Your Game Incorporated to spend as much money in marketing on a daily basis as Nike and Apple spend in marketing on a daily basis. I would love to have, when I drive on a highway, coming off the 395 highway, coming from east to west, from Miami Beach, driving into the city of Miami proper, Apple has owned a couple of billboards right there in the heart of the city, right next to where the American Airlines Arena is, where the Miami Heat play, and right off of the I-95 is the junction of like I-95 and the 395 highway. I mean, it's prime real estate for advertising. I would love to have a Work on Your Game billboard right there. Just put a nice picture of myself there with a link to DreAllDay.com or tell them to go get the mirror. I would love to have that billboard space. Unfortunately, I don't think our company can afford it right now. But Apple has owned that billboard space for like as long as I've lived in Miami. I've been in Miami damn near 15 years. They have owned these two billboards. There's one on the side when you're coming from north to south, another one you see you coming from south to north. They have owned these billboard spaces for a long time. I would love to have those spaces. I should maybe start a campaign for that. If I was female and I'm black, I could probably get away with it if I was female. I'm male, I'm not gonna be able to get away with it. But the fact of the matter is, Apple has that space. I've seen Smart Water had a campaign on there. I heard Nike spends, I can't remember what the number was. I think somebody said $150 a minute in marketing every single day. I would love to be able to do the same things that those people do. I would generate a lot more revenue if I was spending that much in marketing. But the fact of the matter is, they have more resources to play with than what we have over here right now. That's just the fact of the situation. So we got to get our weight up if we want to do what they do. That's the game that we're in. My job is not to complain that Apple has more or that Nike they can spend more on marketing, or that Apple has the billboards that I don't have access to because they got a lease on that billboard for the next 20 years and I can't get it from them. My job is to get my own weight up. For those who don't know that phrase, get your weight up just means work on your fucking game so you're not worrying about what you don't have. My job is to get my weight up so I can make it a closer battle. I want to make it more of a fair fight between me and Apple when it comes to marketing. Right now, they're kicking my ass. I just got to get better. The only thing giving legs to this whole concept, this whole social justice arguments of male versus female, what we got versus what they got, or black versus white, same thing, is that the social justice angle is not new. Social justice angle is not new. Social justice is a thing that's been going on since the 60s, since before many of us were alive. The thing is, it just keeps getting renewed. Every time something happens, it gets renewed. All right, some black death at the hands of a white person, specifically maybe a cop, or some politician that people don't like, or some white person appears to have some privilege or does something really bad and it negatively affects people of color, or at least there's a way that it's angled to negatively affect people of color, then all of a sudden the social justice thing flares back up. It's kind of like having a venereal disease, just flares back up till you get some pills. You get what I'm saying? But the whole point is, you don't want to be looking at the food on another person's plate because you can't eat it anyway. Point number 3, as Jay-Z said, rather, this is still last thing on point number 2, was Jay-Z said, what you eat don't make me shit. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why female athletes do not deserve, quote, equal pay. Number 3, some people may be saying right now, you've heard everything that I've said so far, and I still have not convinced you. I still have not opened your mind. I'm not even trying to change your mind. I'm not in the business of changing people's minds. I'm in the business of possibly opening your mind. And when your mind is open, then you can put in it whatever you want, and however you decide to think, you choose. It's your life. But some people may be saying to me right now, Dre, I get everything that you're saying. You might be saying, Dre, I already knew what you were going to say because I listened to your show before. I know you. I know your angles. I know the way you approach everything all logically and all that. Listen, I know that I am logical to a fault. Some people may be saying, Dre, this has always been a male-driven world. You know, it's always been the patriarchy. The women had to fight for equal rights, no matter what color, over the years. It's time, wouldn't you agree, Dre, that it's time for women to have a bigger slice of the pie? Wouldn't you agree that it's time for women to have more power and more of a voice and be able to do what they want to do a little bit more? Listen, I'm not against that argument that, first of all, I agree that males have had power longer than females have had power. That is, I don't think anyone can argue that. Now, with women, time for women to have a bigger slice of the pie, I would need someone to give me a little bit more context. What do you mean? Do you mean men just need to give up some power and just give it to women just because? That, I'm going to say no. And I'm not saying that men deserve to have it, but if a woman, I'm not saying women in general, if a woman has something if she's bringing something to the table that says, you know what, she needs to be the CEO, she needs to be in charge, we need to get behind her, I'm 100% on that. Now, to just give it to women in general just because, no, I don't agree. Even when it comes to black and white, should we just give a bunch of stuff to black people just because they're black? I will say no, because not all black people ain't created equal. Now, actually, let me take that back. We're created equal. We don't remain equal. All black people ain't the same. So are there some black people who should be listened to? Absolutely, I'm one of them. Are there some black people that should be ignored? They've been ignored. They should keep being ignored because they ain't bringing shit to the table. That is also true. So I'm not with the identity politics of we need to just give something to a group just because they've been marginalized, just because they didn't have power back in the day, just because something bad happened to one of them, just because something bad happened to a bunch of them. I'm not with the identity politics of let's just give something to a group just because you can fill in the blank for whatever reason you want, because not everyone in the group is equal. Not everybody in the group of female athletes even need to be talking about getting equal pay, because every female athlete ain't the same level of skill. Every female athlete ain't delivering at the same level of performance. So should they all be getting more money? No, just the ones who can perform. They got to go out in the open market and they got to get it just like everybody else. This is the game that we're in, folks. It's not about it being male or female. We're talking about male or female, but that's not really the reason for any of this. I'm using male or female because that's the conversation right now. I'm just riding the wave of a hot topic. That's what I'm doing here today. Now, I'm not against the argument that a woman can have a bigger slice of the pie and a woman can be in a position of power. There are plenty of women who are in positions of power and doing their thing right now. At the same time, as I'm saying, I'm not in the handout industry. I'm definitely not in the identity politics game. You should probably know that, even if this is the first time you ever heard of me. And listen, I'm black. So if I wanted to play the identity politics game, I could play it very well. And I'd have a whole different audience of people, maybe not most of you. I have a whole different audience of people and they'd all be applauding everything that I said. I think I can articulate pretty well. I don't want a handout based on the fact that I'm black. I don't want a handout, period. Because if I get a handout, then what about when the handouts are gone? What internal fortitude do I have to get anything myself if everything was based off handouts from the beginning? I don't have any game. I didn't need game. You don't need game to receive a handout. So this is why I don't like the whole concept of handouts and identity politics. You don't need any skills to get a handout. All you gotta do is open your hand and just let it get dropped in. But if you gotta go get it and you have to earn it and you have to work for it, you gotta work on your game and sell your game out in the open market, well, now you know you're good when you start winning because you know you did the work. But if you didn't do the work and things just get handed to you, well, who are you? You ain't really worth anything. I mean, it got handed to you, so whatever you got ain't even worth anything. You didn't earn it. This is just the way that I look at life in general. Again, this has nothing to do with male, female, black, white, even though those are the topics. If something gets pushed through, let's say for black people, they push through reparations. Let's give every black person $100,000. Listen, I'll take it. I will definitely deposit the check, but I ain't going out and protesting. I'm not going standing no picket lines. I'm not flying to DC and joining a protest or some type of activism campaign. I ain't posting nothing on my social media. I ain't doing none of that shit. If y'all want to go do that and I end up being the beneficiary of it, I'll take it. But I ain't doing none of the work to get it. And if it ends up not happening because I ain't participate, well, tough shit for the rest of y'all. That's the way that I play the game. My time, to my estimation, and I'm the one in charge, is better used in other ways. So if you're a person who has never had the power, you've never been in charge, you've never been the one who's been on top, okay, I believe you. I'm not arguing with you. But these days, if you're listening to me today, the tools that are out there now will allow you to get your own power. There are tools that allow you to get your power if you're willing to do the work. Now, if you believe that it's not fair that other people have a head start on you, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm not arguing that other people have not had a head start. If you're female, have males in general had a head start in the world, just the overall big picture world in terms of power over women? The answer is yes. But if you're 19, I don't want to hear that shit from you. All right, that hasn't happened to you. Now, maybe if you're 75, maybe you got that argument. But if you're 19, no, you ain't got that argument. Same thing with black and white. You don't have that argument. I understand maybe 3 generations ago there was an argument maybe for that person, but not you. You don't have it. You can't carry a grievance for somebody 3 generations back. If you carrying that, you got to carry everything else. You can't just take the piece that's convenient for you to paint yourself as someone who needs to be helped, but you don't want to take all the other parts that came with it. You only want the parts that work for you, but you don't want the parts that you got to work for. That's the 2 different arguments. So I agree that other people may have had a head start on you. I agree that some people have opportunities you don't have. I agree that some people's parents set them up for certain levels of success that yours did not. You might even know your parents. I agree with all of these things, 100%. Let me tell you what I also agree with. Life itself ain't fair. Everyone agrees that life isn't fair. Yet, when people notice some type of unfairness that seems to be working against them, they want to start airing these grievances as if they didn't know life wasn't fair. Life ain't fair, people. Sometimes people are just going to have opportunities that you don't have. They're going to have setup that you just ain't got. And that's just what it is. This is the game that you're in. It's called life. This is what makes life interesting. And I'll give you one last episode that you can listen to that will help you with your mentality around this. It's episode 1142. And what I told you in that episode is how to become a champion. You know what makes you a champion in life? Is when you're in a situation that looks like is a losing hand, but you turn it into a winning hand. That's what conquerors do. That's what people who come into power do in life. Now, victims, I can't speak for their perspective, but maybe you can. Hopefully you can. Let's recap today's class, which is why female athletes do not deserve equal pay. Yes, you heard me correctly. Point number one, we're in a performance and a results-based business, and I told you that equality is a myth. So the reason that women's athletes do not get the same revenue or the same income as men's athletes in certain sports like soccer and the NBA is because in soccer and the NBA, men's sports just generate more money in general. There's a bigger pie, thusly the slices that go to the people involved are bigger, regardless of their performance level. There's just a bigger pie. If you want to get more money, maybe you should try getting into a different industry or getting a different job. But you can't complain about it when you knew what the rules were when you got in the job in the first place. Point number two, I told you in episode 1579, never look at the food on another person's plate. What other people have, regardless of their gender or race, is not your business. If you're looking at somebody else's plate, you're already wasting time and hurting yourself. You should be spending that same time, those same energy, resources, attention, and focus on what you can do to put more food on your own damn plate. Your job is not to complain about what other people have more than you. Your job is to go get more for yourself so you don't have to be complaining. Point number three, some might say, well, Dre, has always been a male-driven world. Women should have a bigger slice of the pie. Listen, I agree that some women deserve a bigger slice of the pie. If they've done more to work and they bring more value to the table, then the woman should be in charge. I'm all 100% for that. But the identity politics of let's just give it to these people just because there's something that happened back in the day or something that's happened to them as a group or something that didn't happen to or for them as a group, I don't play the identity politics game. So in case any of you was coming here for that, this ain't that. So if you think it's not fair that other people have had a head start, I agree with you. I also agree that life isn't fair. So if you don't like unfairness, you might want to kill yourself. No, take that as a tongue-in-cheek. But this is the way it is in life. All right, things are unfair. Things don't go the way that you want them to go. Some people have advantages and privileges and opportunities that you just don't have. And if you want to be a champion in life, you take the fact that you don't have those same advantages and privileges and opportunities and you win any damn way. If you're not willing to do that, you're listening to the wrong show. Now, I want you to send me a text and tell me what's the most valuable insight you got from today's episode. My number is 305-384-6894. Work on your fucking game. Dre all day.